facts, but I'll give it a try. Maybe you guys can hear part of it anyway. Welcome everyone. It's wonderful for you to be here. This house has been the scene of an awful lot of events and parties over the years, and as far as I'm concerned, this is the best one yet. It's great to see old friends like Jack Cagle and Peter Dalrymple and Kevin Roberts, and meet new friends as well. So thank you for being here. Just a little history about the house. It was built in 1922, and it was actually first owned by H. Roy Cullen. We probably know who he was, but he was one of the great oil men back in the day and made a lot of big oil discoveries back in the 30s, and came out one of the richest people in the world, and was also a great philanthropist. He pretty much kick-started the University of Houston with a $160 million gift. He funded the Baylor School of Medicine and pretty much kick-started the medical center here in town. So his legacy lives on. And Roy Cullen had, I think, 3 daughters and a son, and one of the daughters, Margaret, ended up being the beneficiary of this house. It was given to her when she got married. She married a guy named Douglas Marshall. And Douglas Marshall was not from Houston. I think he was from Missouri or somewhere. But he flew B-26 planes in the desert fighting Rommel in North Africa during World War II. And as the story goes, one of his flights, or several of his flights maybe, he looked down and he saw these just beautiful stallions just running through the desert. And Arabians generally are white, have a gray color, and long silky hair, fur. So they were quite striking, and he always remembered that. And then after the war, he got married to Margaret Cullen. Roy Cullen gave them this house. It was ultimately about a 4,500 acre ranch. They raised Angus for a while, and then they quickly started raising and breeding Arabians, and that's what it really became famous for. They became one of the most prolific Arabian breeders in the States. He made many trips to the Middle East to try to procure breeding stock. I think he, along the way ended up having people like Anwar al-Sadat was a guest here for an event that they had. That one goes back to some more modern Texans like Patrick Swayze, who was here at that time. He grew up in this area. His mother was a dance teacher. You're probably familiar with some of his films like Dirty Dancing. And I know I've seen it mentioned that he was here at that party when Sadat was here, and ultimately did own an Arabian. The Arabians in the U.S., probably 50% of them descend from lines that were bred right here at Glenlock. And in addition to the Arabians, Glenlock has kind of a Scottish background. And I was just talking to Stuart about Scotland, so it kind of brings home. The stained glass windows in this room behind me came out of an old church in Scotland, and there are more of them that go in the tower that goes up the side of the corner of the house, so you can't see it from here. We're also from that Scottish church. It has a lot of Scottish background artifacts, just the stonework, all of that has kind of a Scottish theme. And among other things, in addition to Arabians and Angus, they raised lions and tigers, and they had a whole zoo that kind of extended back on this part of the house. And by the way, you guys are welcome to walk around the grounds all you want to. Afterwards, the lions and tigers are gone. I was at a dentist's office last week, and a lady works there who was a Wonderlic before she got married. Actually used to come here when she was a kid, and she said that when they were kids, the lions and tigers were at one point were cubs, and the parents would say, "Don't run, because if you run, then they get you." And apparently they pull some of their teeth, so they couldn't really hurt you, but you can remember being tackled by a little lion. And also, maybe some of you know, Jack, I bet you know Steve Aldis with New Quest. Well, Steve worked here when he was a kid. And I recently talked to him about this place and said, you know, I heard there was one they buried one of the lions over in the island and some of the lakes here in Glenlock Farms. And he said, I know right where he was buried because I buried him. Steve went to A&M as in a veterinary school and then later became a real estate developer and all that. But he worked here as a kid and has some neat stories. I had another friend who worked here in the 70s. And when he was being shown around the place, they had all the cat cages out back. Our breaker boxes still say cat cages, but they're not there. And he said that the ranch foreman showed him one of the tigers. He reached in and pet. This is Sheila. We raised her from a cub. She's friendly. And so he thought, well, that's great. And then he later came back with one of his workers and showed him, you know, that's a tame tiger, whatever. And then he walked around the side and he heard, Mark, Mark. And he turned around and his worker had his hand in the cage and the tiger had that hand in his mouth. And he said, Mark, she's not biting down, but she's not letting go. So he went around and said, Sheila, Sheila, and then she let go and that guy, some color came back. But the grounds had the zoo, had all, I even think they even had some camels here. The grounds of the ranch extended all the way to 249, to Stubner, to 2920, and of course to Spring Cypress. A lot of the big pine trees that you see were there and were part of the road coming in back in the day. And some of the pine trees that I think are particularly beautiful, or you'll see down the grounds, have twisted limbs, kind of like a live oak tree. And those are kind of a unique blend. Loblolly pines is what they are. They're kind of different than the usual telephone poles that you get used to. So the furniture right outside behind everybody here came from a temple in India that is reportedly over 1,000 years old. I don't really know how that fits into Scotland. They're there. There's an outbuilding here that now is a guest house and a gym. And it used to be a dairy, and you can still see all the little electrical outlets where they bring the cows up and then plug them in and milk them and that sort of thing. What we have, we call our clubhouse, it's a summer kitchen. It used to be the training arena for the big cats. Behind that there is you'll see a low stone wall and there's some plants growing up now, but that's still a licensed heliport. So when they bring in someone like Sadat or the Shah of Iran or the King of Namibia or different people that have been here, they fly them in on a helicopter and then they take off. They had another ranch near Columbus and another one had plenty of property. So they sort of would entertain them royally. And I understand the State Department underwrote some of that. So if they got any whispers about what was going on in the Middle East and maybe some of that flowed through, as well as doing the Arabian horse business. And the Arabians, of course, started out in Saudi Arabia. Their law is they never leave the country, but they did actually let a small herd of Arabians go to one of the presidents of Egypt. It was before Sadat. And so that's where some of the Arabians here came from Egypt, not just from Saudi Arabia. But they weren't, you couldn't buy them, they could only be given as gifts. So that's kind of the history of the place. It's a wonderful old home. We're enjoying it. We're the latest custodians, the way we look at it. And the Marshalls lived here and raised kids up into the 70s and 80s. And then after that, ultimately, Dan and Marie Benditz bought the place. And they were here for about 10 years, and then we bought it from them. We've been here about 4.5 years. And the Bendits also redid a lot of things that had kind of gone south, and they redid a lot of the woodwork and did some other beautiful things. That little pond out here that used to be the watering hole where they claim their most famous Arabian was called Merafic. He's the one that had all the bloodlines that went so far. That used to be where he got his magic elixir when he'd go down to the pond. And then back behind us, there's a wall there now, but the equestrian center is about 30 acres, and so they still have stables, and you can stable a horse there, or ride it, or train it, and all of that. That's right back across the fence here. When you're leaving, if you drive around, you can kind of see what it looks like there. This is a wonderful neighborhood. It's a planned community now. We have 6 acres here. Other than that, it's all golf course and subdivision. The people here visit on golf carts. I'm not sure how legal that actually is, but it's in the neighborhood. Someone calls you up, come on over for dinner. We jump in our golf cart and zip on down the street. And it's kind of nice. I know most of you are probably from this area. You probably heard of Glenlock like we had, but we didn't know very much about it when we were introduced to it in the very beginning when the bandits put it up for sale. And it's just kind of a delight learning the history, and it kind of weaves into the whole fabric of Houston, really, when you bring in the Cullens. So thank you all for being here. Make yourselves at home. If I can answer any more questions, run me down. Be right here.
Thank you.
If you want to go visit the grounds, you can go through this door. There's a door right back over here. That would be the best too, to get around. And you can walk on out. There's some tennis courts, and then the building right by the tennis courts is the old not the cage, but the training arena. Question?
I don't know.
That's okay. Go ahead.
My question is, what was the purpose of the Lions? Because you said something a few minutes ago that they were training the Lions. So I made up that the Lions had a purpose. They were training them or something.
They didn't go to a circus. I think they were training them not to bite.